bunch of books, for, like 6 books. And they would arrive and I would read them, and then order 6 more. So I just kept reading, and most of them were Leadbeater's books.
I love him.
I couldn't get
He's
enough
amazing.
of it.
Yeah, he is just amazing. So,
Um,
like I said, like when I was reading your book, it was like a mirror image, and so I've always wanted to recommend the hidden side of things to people that I know, but I think most people aren't open enough to see that it was written in really old times, so they have to relate so you didn't change anything, which I liked.
it's
I hope I'm explaining it
the
right.
teachings never
Yeah.
change.
Right.
The principles have been the same for millions of years, not just hundreds of years or thousands of years, but millions of years. Those don't change. It's always the same.
Yeah.
So all you can do is give a different viewpoint and look at
Right.
it from a different angle.
Right.
And hopefully in every generation, there's someone who comes along and explains it in
In
current.
today's time, and that's what you did so
exactly.
well.
And that's
Hello.
what our intention
Kelsey, what's up?
Hey.
Hey.
Grateful Dead.
That book that Roger recommended, The Masters in the Path, um, I think very seldom read any of Leadbeater's books today, but that is one that I pick up every once in a while, and I reread parts of it.
Hey, Maria. Hi.
So if you haven't read it, definitely read this. That's the one that really got me inspired to do what the kind of work that we're doing. I'm gonna run get my water bottle.
Okay. Hey, what's up, Julian? Good to see you. It's been a while. Hey, welcome back. Glad you're here. Might be some new faces in the room since you were here last time. That's Julian, everyone. Oh, the restrooms are important, right? Right. I get myself into trouble with all this gear because inevitably I forget a connector or forget something or something doesn't work. I know, I need to simplify this stuff a little bit. one of the mic cables is not working. But that's okay. Ivan, what's up, man?
Ivan's here, now we can start.
Do you remember where we left off?
We'll start from the beginning.
Yeah. Paige, hey, welcome. Here. This is Terry, Paige, Terry. That's Roger. This is his office, Paige. Come on in.
Come on in.
Come on in, pick a seat. We'll get started in a minute. I'm trying to work out our technology here. I'm trying to get the microphones working. So Paige, that's the book. Mom, can you hand Paige that book so she can see what we're studying? That's the book that we're looking at. I forgot the box at home though, so we don't have any today. I forgot the box at home. We don't have them today.
Or they're all, it's available online too. Okay, I'll post it online.
All right, I hope our microphones are going to work.
Is it?
I think so.
Golf.
All right, 1 minute.
Okay.
After we do our meditation, maybe we have everybody just say their name.
Okay.
And then we can mention the names of the people online.
Okay.
Do we have any online?
2.
Okay.
The little I symbol.
Okay.
And then the guys came to talk to us.
Yeah.
It was a
That works.
wonderful class. Everybody really liked that.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I hope everyone else did.
So I don't know where the other gals are today. I didn't know I was coming because I was golfing, and I thought, I can make it.
All right, I hope the audio is working. All right.
Oh.
It's 2:30.
All right, 2:30.
It is 2:30. Before we do our opening meditation, let's I think we should do some introductions just so everyone knows who everyone is, and inevitably people walk in. A couple, 3 more. Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. We'll just wait a minute then before we get started. So some logistics. The restroom is out the door to the left, and then another left. There's a restroom right. So behind this wall. This is the book that we're studying. It is hard copy is available for 10.
Hard copy?
Physical hard
Oh,
versus PDF versus digital PDF, which is free. I can email that to anyone who wants it. So I don't have the box of these here today though, so I can bring them next time. Yeah, it's 12 chapters, and this book changed my life when I found it in 2006 when this guy was teaching it, and that's lots has happened from 2006 until today. But I committed back then when I first met him that I wanted to teach it as well. So I've been getting as much from him as I could over the years. So now we're doing this.
I've been downloading it to him.
Yeah, we've been hooking USB cables into our ears at night and just like transferring.
There they are.
Oh,
Hi.
Hey, what's up? Good to see you.
I didn't know.
We were wondering where all of them were.
Hey, Mary, good to see you
It was
again.
actually my fault. I was like, oh, Joe, I didn't.
Do we have chairs?
Yeah, I brought 3 more. I think there should be one more.
Well, we had a little GPS.
I didn't know, I was golfing, and there was, you know, I thought he was off that golf course, it's got 2:30, 2:45, you know, so it's just. But for why? I didn't know I was coming. I didn't bring a book.
All right, I think we're all here. Let's go ahead and get.
Sold all the books. Yeah, all took
No, I have 2 boxes of books at home that I forgot today.
2 more boxes. You already got me.
No, we have the box of these and then the box of our book. They're both in my garage.
I see.
All right, welcome everyone. Glad to see all of your smiling faces here. Before we do our opening meditation, I just want to quickly go around the room and just say your name. If you want to share 1 or 2 sentences, you can. If not, about anything. If not, but keep it to 1 or 2 sentences, and your name is just fine as well. So, Ivan, can you say hello first?
Hi, my name is Ivan.
Okay.
Jillian. Maria. Amel, I'm Paul's mom.
I'm Carol.
Carol.
Deborah.
Mary. Jerry. Kelsey. Paige. Silva.
Roger.
Terry. All
You
right.
gotta say Paul, just keep it.
And Paul.
There you go.
All right. No one took me up on the 2 sentences. All right. I'm surprised. Usually,
I was gonna say, it's
usually-
not possible for me to speak in under 2 sentences.
well, okay, that's why. Because usually people talk a lot in this group, so I'm surprised that no one wanted to.
Who's online?
And we have.
Yes, exactly.
So you might have noticed that we have all this gear up here, video camera here, and then 2 microphones there. We're on Facebook Live, and we, from time to time, have between 3 and 15 people that join us from every once in a while, from as lands as far and wide as Australia and all over the United States as well. We have some friends there. Oh, Sue Cavelli from Chicago. Hey, Sue. All right, we have a few friends online. So from time to time, I'll be paying attention to this, and we'll field questions from our online attendees, and you're always welcome to. Oh, hey, how's it going? Is there a chair over there?
Yeah,
Right here.
Okay. If anyone here live does not want the camera on them, you can just tell me, don't put the camera on me. You can still ask a question. We do that so that our online
Like
people
we
can.
do it in Las Vegas.
We do that so our online people feel like they're included as well, and they see who we are here instead of just looking at our mugs the entire time. All right, before we start diving into the content, let's do a little meditation just to kind of calm our vibes down and do a little harmonization. So go ahead and just sit tall. Use the back of the chair for comfort, but keep the spine tall and erect, and start to settle your body down. The only muscles that are active are the muscles that support the spine. So keep the crown of the head basically on top of the base of the spine. Make sure there's no tension in the shoulders. Make sure the jaw is relaxed. Begin to deepen the breath a little bit. We'll chant Om at the beginning and then again at the end. Feel free to join or not. It's completely up to you. Inhale. Just for the next moment or two, we'll breathe calmly and just follow your breath and just kind of intend for your emotions and your thoughts to become still and calm. If following the breath is not something that you typically do, just intend for the inhale and exhale to be smooth and even, with no rough spots or catches or hiccups in the breath. Even breath translates into even and calm thoughts. Inhale. Om. And bow the chin and slowly open the eyes. It's bright, so do it slowly so your eyes don't get shocked. It's magic. When we meditate, we open the eyes and more people appear. Every single time, without fail. Maybe we should do it again and we'll have like 40 more people. Just
don't have so many chairs.
This is our 15th meeting.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa.
See what you've been listening to?
In these sessions. So thanks for sticking around. Yeah. And we are on our second meeting for chapter 8, which is the power of thought. And if we have time today, we'll dive into the next chapter, which is, I think I say this every time, one of my favorite chapters, the question of evil. Yeah.
Oh,
Is that not the next chapter?
yes.
Yeah. If we have time, we'll be diving into the question of evil, which is a spiritual concept that sometimes plagues aspirants on a spiritual quest. So that's next. But we did not finish the entire chapter on the power of thought too. So let's continue.
I want to refer to something you said earlier while we were getting ready for the meditation, and that is that energy follows thoughts. People in the past used to more often say thoughts are things, which is not incorrect. But I think it's even more helpful to keep in mind that energy follows thoughts. Thoughts are the circuitry, and it attracts energy. You lay down the tracks and the train comes along, because that's just how nature works. When you think a thought, or anyone thinks a thought, it's surrounded by energy, and it automatically pulls in energy. The amount of energy depends on how strong you are able to create that thought. We created a strong thought either because we practiced it for many, many years, and we're very careful about our thoughts, which most people are not, or because we have repeated it many, many times. This is the secret of mantras or affirmations. You repeat it, and not just, as a matter of rote, but you repeat it with intention. That's what draws the energy in, is the intention and the focus. And the more precise and the clearer that is, the more energy it will pull in with it.
Most of us have heard the term or the word tantra before, and a lot of times it's associated with something that's sexual or sensual in nature, but it's actually not. That's almost for lack of a better word, a bastardization of what tantra practices are. Tantra and physical yoga are almost synonymous. And since the title of our sessions is Theosophy and Yoga Webinar, we want to bring in as many yogic concepts and teachings as well to support the theory that Theosophy gives us. So yoga and tantra give us the practices, the actual physical life practices that support the theory that we're talking about. So speaking about how energy or thought creates the tracks for the locomotive to come by, that's basically what the entire science of physical yoga is doing. You're learning to first cultivate energy, known as prana, and then direct it either within your own body, firstly, and then you can actually direct it outwards to help people, to heal people, to give positive power or force behind a situation, or to help resolve a situation. Prana is like the locomotive. It's the vehicle. It rides, it pushes, it moves, it's in constant motion. And you can do that through thought, through doing that in your own body and through the breath specifically. That's why the breath is always the key. They're always the key for meditation practices and for physical yoga practices. The physical poses that we all think of when we talk about yoga, those are almost secondary in importance. The breathing is of primary importance. That's where the prana is cultivated. And then once it's cultivated and you become a powerful person, then you can use that power for good or for not so good. It works both ways.
I like the fact that you use the term cultivate prana or energy, because we can't create energy. We don't create it. Everything in the world is energy, and it can be transformed between energy and matter. Physicists know that. Metaphysicists also know that. There is no lack of energy, but just as a farmer cultivates a field full of produce, he didn't make the produce happen. He created the environment and put everything in the right place so that it could happen. And we do the same thing in yoga. We don't create energy, but we put everything in place so that it automatically comes in and it flourishes.
And specifically, we focus it. A common practice in tantric hatha yoga is the idea of prana dharana. And for those of you who know about the Yoga Sutras, we've mentioned it many times here. Dharana is the sixth limb of the eightfold path of Raja Yoga, and that simply means to focus or to concentrate. And when you focus prana, that's what we're doing. We're cultivating it, we're collecting it, we're gathering it, and usually it's done at one of the energetic centers in the body. A lot of times it's done in the midbrain. Sometimes that's referred to as the Ajna or Agnya chakra, the third eye. And that's a very appropriate place to build energy, because when you breathe in through your nostrils, the esoteric portion of the air that you breathe in cultivates right there, and kind of in the sinuses, the midbrain, the several glands that are there, the pineal, what's the other important gland there in the middle of the head? What's the
Pituitary.
Yeah. By the way, if I didn't mention this, but please chime in and speak with us and converse with us. People online ask questions. I know some of us are very well accomplished yogis in the room and might have a lot to add or share or challenge to the conversation. We love that when that happens. So please don't hesitate to add to our discussion. So it's not just us talking at you the entire time. But yes, energy and thoughts, they go together. And once we become a true master over our mind and our consciousness, then we become so powerful in the world. We can create things to happen that may have seemed completely impossible before. Yeah. Okay, let's see. We covered about half to 2/3 of the chapter. I want to do a quick recap. Since this chapter is all about learning to harness the power of our thoughts, one of the sections in the chapter was about concentration and meditation. And let's review what the definition of meditation actually is, because it is kind of a vague thing. When someone says, let's meditate, I bet there are 10,000 different ideas of what that means when you meditate. Or am I going to levitate off the ground? Am I going to just watch my breath? Am I going to relax my body? Am I going to see pink light? What does that mean when you say meditate? There's 100,000 different ideas. So if we could encapsulate it into a definition, meditation is actually two things. It's a process of doing something, and it's a state of being. It's a process and a state by which the mind is brought under control so it can be transcended. Okay. Specifically speaking, it's the last 3 limbs of those 8 limbs I referenced earlier that the wise dude from 500 BC, Patanjali, compiled and wrote. And the last 3 limbs are learning to focus first, learning to contemplate the object of focus second, and then the third would be transcendence or samadhi. And so that's the process, learning to focus first, then learning to contemplate, which is a deeper form of focus. And then the state has several words to reference it. So samadhi actually has several levels or layers of it. At the lowest part of samadhi, there's still the awareness of the thing you're meditating on. I didn't mention this, but meditation does require an object or a seed. It's almost impossible for most humans to go blank and think and just eliminate all thoughts. If you've ever tried it, it's nearly impossible unless you're a super advanced yogi and you can turn off your brain. But our brains don't turn off. That's not the way that this entire book is about, how to get control of all the stuff that your brain creates. The ego. The ego is generated by the brain. It's very hard to turn all that off and eliminate everything we think we are based on our thoughts. So it's the process is to find a seed or an anchor thought or an object of meditation. And then once we actually can calm ourselves enough to contemplate it and be still for a long time in this process, the higher parts of samadhi is the state of yoga. So we're talking about the process and then the state. The higher levels of samadhi is when you begin to transcend and leave the physical brain. And that state is also known as turiya, which means the fourth level of consciousness. So it's no longer body awareness.
I wanted to mention that a lot of the people who teach meditation, and specifically the Yoga Sutras, make a big distinction between meditation with seed and meditation without seed. Both of those are quite elevated. For most people, it's beyond what they will even experience in this particular lifetime. The more important thing to me to keep in mind is that meditation is all about self-transformation. If it just gives you a euphoric feeling, we have drugs that can do that. But yoga and meditation really has for a goal to raise your level of consciousness. And in the process, it changes you as an individual. You're no longer the person you were before that. So it's a rebirth. It's a new individual, a new beginning every time you make this little tiny leap of consciousness. And they do happen throughout your lifetime if you make an effort towards it. If you make no effort towards it, it is so slow, it's almost imperceptible. But once you start making that effort as a matter of repetition, or as a matter of course in your everyday life, then every once in a while you'll notice a little tiny quantum leap. And each time you make one of those little quantum leaps, it takes a long time for that to seep through all of your consciousness. And that's the reason why it is never a good idea to try to make it go too quickly. The people who try to make it go too fast will always get in trouble. Maybe that's a good point.
Yeah, this might be a good time to talk about the many pitfalls and dangers that present themselves.
So why don't you state Silva's question, or maybe Silva
Let's have
wants
Silva
to ask.
Let's have Silva ask her question.
So
You okay with that? Okay.
in your book and many of the teachings, it's not like verbatim, but they say to be careful. The path could be dangerous, and go through when you're ready, when you're well prepared. So I guess that's kind of you could add to that question.
So what are the dangers on the path of spiritual development?
One of the things that I ran into early on was when you go down the path, it's like walking on the edge of a razor. You have to be real careful because you can slip off on either side. So you want to keep your balance just right.
In our last class, we talked a little bit at the very end about the loneliness that many people experience once they take that fateful step of devoting themselves to the path, and that at a certain point there is no turning back. You have nowhere to go but forward. The dangers often come from not from that part of it, but from interactions with other people. It often becomes something of a competition. 8-hour meditation, marathon meditation groups. These groups that get together and there's kind of a competition about, oh, my teacher is this individual, highly advanced individual in the spiritual hierarchy, not even in human form, but one of the masters of the wisdom, or well, mine is this one, and they go back and forth, and there's all of this competition for advancement, or I look who I am.
Comparison and contrasting.
That was one of the things that really attracted us to Eckhart Tolle's works, is that he emphasizes so much the need to recognize, diminish, and finally eliminate the ego. And that is paramount in spiritual growth. If you still have that ego, and trust me, if you think you don't have it, you probably are fooling yourself. I have lots of ego still to work on, and most of us do. And it's that ego that will get you in trouble by trying to be competitive and trying to move faster than anybody else. What you're going to do is like stretching a rubber band. And if you don't change the molecular structure slowly as you go, you stretch it. Or a string on an instrument. If you put a new string on a piano, you can't just stretch it out to the new tone that it is going to be vibrating at. It has to be done carefully and slowly and over a period of time. And then finally, because this is tension, and we're doing the same thing when we're on the spiritual path, we are putting tension on ourselves. The average person is just bumbling along, remember, and life is carrying them. They're coming along at the natural rate. When we make it our priority to move faster than the average, we're putting tension, we're putting stress on all of our bodies, all of our being. And that's a real stress. Don't fool yourself. It is a stress. And if you pull it just slightly too much, it's going to crack. All of us who have been in metaphysical groups for a number of years know people who have had psychological breakdowns and who have mental issues that can be attributed to trying to go too quickly. Some of them are very sad and very disastrous. And the problem is, it doesn't just affect this lifetime, it affects this and the next and perhaps 2 lifetimes. So what good did it do to try to speed up the process for that person? It actually made them slow down, and it will take them much longer than they were hoping. So go slowly, go carefully. It's about changing who you are. It's about changing the way you see things. It's about being a better person. It's not about advancement. It's not about you being more advanced than somebody else.
The motivation is everything. The reason behind the actions. If you've decided to walk a path of spiritual evolution, you've got to be honest with yourself and ask, why do you want to advance? Is it because you want to be a better yogi than someone else? Is it that you want to be more spiritually elevated than and that is the reason for a lot of us to do these things. We want to be able to read someone's thoughts, or to be, psychic or clairvoyant and all that. So the universe somehow recognizes our motives. Karma is real, and it's not always instant karma, but it recognizes, and inevitably it always comes back. These very strong dictators or leaders of countries who seem to have ultimate power, they always crumble at some point. Every dictator in the past has always crumbled. It's never perpetual. So if you use power that you've cultivated with an intention behind it that isn't selfless, it's very short-lived. And that's the problem with a lot of us. With a lot of spiritual aspirants, we're just going to come out and say it, that they're not looking at the big picture. When I talk big picture, we mean like multiple lifetimes. I know that's a very different concept to think about, but this lifetime is just a blip on the radar. And yes, it's important. It is important, but we want to know, where are we going in the future and why are we trying to get there? If we are walking the path, things will change in our life. So I want to be more specific even. Terry gave some generalities about how there are other groups, for example, that, oh, we can meditate. I can sit still for 8 hours and you only sat still for 4. So I've achieved a level that you haven't. And I've seen that in yoga circles. Sometimes when I go to Colorado and train with the teacher that I go to there, some people try to move their legs, and like, so no one, they look around and see, did anyone see me move my leg? If I need to move my leg during a meditation, I'm just going to move it. I'm aware of that. So that's just a little thing, but there are bigger things too. For example, when you start to change your vibrations based on your regular meditation practice or yoga practice or life routines. By the way, a yoga practice isn't just on a yoga mat. It's how you do your life. It's how you interact with people. When you start doing that consistently, you'll realize that things in your life will change, and things include people. And this has been an ongoing discussion. We've talked about this. If you're committed to doing your life the way you choose to practice it, people will fall away. And sometimes not easily, sometimes with resistance. And sometimes there comes conflict with that. That's one of the specific dangers that we can discuss. That's a danger, because sometimes they'll leave mad and they'll try to undermine something that you're trying to accomplish. I mean, let's just be real practical. Sometimes friends won't like what you're doing, or groups won't appreciate what your group is doing or the path that you've chosen. And those are all physical things. And then there's the super physical aspect of danger. When we spend time in meditation and we do raise our sensitivity, the other planes of existence have a lot more entities and entities that we're not aware of initially until we raise our vibrations to those levels. And when we practice and go there and kind of offer ourselves up as, hey, I'm a spiritual aspirant, I want to become clairvoyant and I want to do all these things, you open yourself up to things that you may not be ready for. Psychosis that Terry was talking about.
So what is the ultimate motivation or goal? Is it to serve humanity, to become one with the absolute, or what is the proper motivation?
There are many goals in the interim. The ultimate goal is to, yes, become consciously one with the absolute, but there are intermediary goals as well. Did you want to add?
Everything is an intermediary goal. There is no, as far as I can see, ultimate goal. we say ultimate, meaning the most advanced that we can even comprehend or visualize. But everything is relative. No matter how high you get, there is something higher. So the goal is to increase awareness and consciousness, and that's nothing more than that. It's that simple.
It's interesting though, because we need to do it unselfishly, but yet we have to do our personal practice, which is 100% selfish. So it's like we have to take care of ourselves in order to take care of others. That's kind of how I look at it. Yes, our ultimate motivation is to help all, because if you believe in the idea of the one life, that there is only one divinity and we're all just parts of it, energetic patterns of it, then yes, we are working for the benefit and betterment of all. But how do you do that if you don't take care of yourself first? It always comes back to that really simple airline attendant aphorism where you have to put if the pressure drops in the airplane, you got to put your own oxygen mask on first, or else you're going to be dead. So you can't help anyone else. So your personal practice is 100% selfish. But why? But why are you doing it? You got to remember the reason. Do you want to just do you want to be so powerful you can control people and be a puppet master for life? Or do you want to be of service to all? So it's both. It's a selfish motivation in order to help others. That's kind of how I see it.
It's very easy for people in groups like this to fall back to the thinking that I want everything to be perfect. I want everyone to be happy. And I can help them achieve that. Well, if you could, that wouldn't even be helpful. It's not about achieving anything. It's about the journey. How do you get there? And it's individual. Each one has to do it himself or herself. We can't do anything for someone else. I might be able to inspire you a little bit. That's about all I could possibly do, and I may not even be able to do that. But each person has to take every single step on their own. And so we look out and we say, oh, the world shouldn't be this way. There shouldn't be this much evil in the world, which is what we're going to discuss in the next chapter. But yeah, there should. There should be. It should be. We discussed this with the people at Siena. Everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be for one reason. We made it that way. All the karma in the world, we created. It can't be otherwise.
And if we don't believe in that, we believe then there's an external authority being mean and playing cruel games. That's the other option to believe. Either that's how it is, or that's how it is. I don't see any other.
I have a question since you brought up karma. So say, someone does something to create a negative karma, but then after realizing their negative behavior, they start changing that behavior to a positive behavior and trying to work on their karma and give back or to society or whatnot. Can they get rid of that karma, or is it still going to hit you no matter what changes you make?
Well, yes, as we pointed out in the class on karma, karma cannot be just discarded. It always has to be resolved. You did something to create the karma, and you have to do something to balance that back out again. It may take lifetimes for that to happen. That's why most people don't believe in karma, because they think it should all be instantaneous, but that's not how karma works. It's not like gravity. It may take 5,000 years or 5 million years to be completely worked out, depending on the type of karma. So the karma is what keeps us on the path of advancement. If we experience no karmic consequences to our actions, the world would fall apart. It's karma that keeps everything moving back towards natural law. When we do something that causes an imbalance, karma makes a note of that, and it puts pressure on us. At first, it's very, very subtle pressure, and most people ignore it or are completely unaware of it. And if we do ignore it, then it gets stronger and stronger, and finally it's like the house caves in on you. And then it gets your attention. But one way or another, life will get your attention. And it may totally incapacitate you for a lifetime if it has to, but it will get your attention. And slowly we start paying better attention to it. And the more aware we are, the fewer mistakes we make. But in the early stages, we make lots and lots of mistakes. And we have to allow everyone to make those mistakes. It would be like your child saying, "You're making too many mistakes in math. Give me your homework, I'll do it for you." Well, what good does that do? No, you show them, you teach them how to do it, and then you stand aside and you watch it. And nature does the same thing. It gives us the example, and then it stands aside. And when we don't do it right, there's a push to get back to the principle involved. Did I say that right?
Yes, that sounds great. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh, dear.
Any other thoughts on that before we?
I wanted to go way back to when we were talking about, trying to advance too quickly. I read an article just recently about a man who had been meditating for many years, and he decided to go to one of these retreats where you meditate 10 hours a day, or yeah, I think it was 10. Anyway, it was like a 10-day retreat and 10 or 11 hours of meditation per day.
Our friend Brian went to one.
Yes. Well, this guy didn't have very good results. He ended up having a psychotic experience, and they had to call the medics, and he was hospitalized in a psych ward for a few days because of this meditation marathon that he was competing in. So that at least supposedly was a temporary result, but some of these results are permanent, or at least for the remainder of this and possibly more lifetimes.
I'm just very interested in this particular episode you're speaking about, how we try to excel too quickly.
Mhm.
I'm not sure I understand that process, if it is a process. Is it because we force ourselves to do
Yes,
things
exactly.
that we don't even feel?
Right.
That's crazy.
It creates a disconnect.
Okay, so how could that have an effect of lifetime damage? That's what I'm not.
Well, anyone who has mental illnesses, that's usually a
So
lifetime
that
damage.
precede- okay,
Yes.
okay.
Let me give you
Not necessarily precede, but could be caused by
See that?
these practices.
Let me give you a very close example. Most of you probably have heard of and maybe even met Daniel Brinkley. All right, so he, at the age of 25, knowing nothing at all about metaphysics, was struck by lightning in his own home. And he immediately, he had this serious nerve damage and burns throughout his entire body. But he became extremely sensitive, not just to physical light and everything else, but to everything. He became psychic, so to speak. But he was not well prepared for it at all. And it has taken a severe toll on him. This is probably 30, 35 years later now.
1977,
But he lives actually in Henderson, I believe.
Yeah.
He has really struggled with this and has done amazing things with it. But there's a lifetime that when you do when you have an episode during a meditation, it can be just as profound as that. It has to do with Kundalini. When you inadvertently, or in his case, it was a natural event, lightning, caused the spontaneous arousal of Kundalini, it can be disastrous.
Said a different way, these powers that are said to exist in advanced yogis or advanced esoteric people that have practiced and studied, they're very real. Special powers exist, and they can be cultivated on purpose, or they can manifest as a natural result of your ethical and character development. And that's the proper, in our opinion, that's the proper way to develop special powers, is to be a good person and to be 100% unwavering in your ideals and your motivation to help others versus having selfish motives. And then when you become that clear and that good of a human being, and you've worked on yourself and you've done your practices, abilities just come to you. Most of us know people who just can come up with answers to problems very quickly. Like, how did you do that? Run organizations, for example, and have visions of how they want a situation or an organization or their life to become, and they do it. there are many examples of those people. Elon Musk is one of them. He's a visionary. Steve Jobs was one of them. I mean, many of the leaders, many of whom we know and many of whom we don't know about, have powers. And those, I would say, are siddhis. It's what Patanjali talks about, these special. Now, I don't know that Steve Jobs or Elon Musk would consider themselves a yogi, but they've done certain things with their constitutions to create the space for extra energy to come through. Now, it's undeniable that these guys have energy and are doing great things in the world with it. If we try to cultivate that before we're ready for it, it's dangerous. That's the bottom line. Being around yoga for a number of years now, I've seen many situations where people try to do very intense breathing exercises, very advanced pranayama exercises, whether it's rapid breathing for 25 minutes at a time, then holding your breath for as long as you can and doing it again, and sometimes even bouncing to try to, literally bouncing the bottom of your sacrum or the bottom of your tailbone on your seat, on your chair, to try to shake loose this kundalini energy. Literally doing things to try to wake up this dormant energy that is said to reside in all of us at the bottom of our spine. And they're trying to, Jerry, look at your face. Yeah. And so when this special energy is said to be released, it ascends the spine and gives us these powers. Now, I can say from my opinion that I believe the most powerful people we know on earth, whether it's a spiritual leader or a leader in business, they have a certain amount of this kundalini that is awakened, but they didn't necessarily do this and breathe all day like this in order to wake it up somehow. And people do that. People do these things, and that's where some dangers can come. Not only physiological dangers, but psychic dangers. If you deprive your mind and your brain and your spinal column of energy, of oxygen for a period of time through these breath techniques, that's dangerous.
And I
Oh,
Yeah, freezing.
believe
They're
that-
cold.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
That Musk and Jobs also conjured some negative energies.
I want
Okay,
to
so
address
that's why
that.
Sure,
When you
sure.
were saying that, that's why maybe my face looked.
Yeah.
Because they conjured some really negative stuff in their business practices.
Sure.
And so, that's all.
That's exactly what I was thinking too. And it brought me back to Eckhart Tolle. One of the sections he deals with in one of his books is what constitutes success?
Mm-hmm.
Is it because you create this magnificent business and it makes lots of money and you become very wealthy from your endeavors? Is that success? He said, or do you have to take into account the collateral damage that occurred in order for you to achieve that? The people that got trampled on, your family members that had to put up with your ranting and raving and screaming, and the lunatics that happens when things don't go right. Is that success? He didn't really answer the question, but he made us think about how do you even measure success? Yes, Paige.
I was just gonna say, like, I appreciate your definitions, but from my experience, they feel very incomplete, especially around the topic of karma, because I feel like karma is mislabeled constantly, and really, karma is just essentially the comeback of your own state of being. So whatever agreements you've made, belief systems, feelings, paradigms, imprints that you create and you hold within you, that's your karma. That's what you live out. And so it's not until you've identified those things and worked on them that karma changes. And I think it's important to say that, like, with the moving too quickly, you don't want to move too quickly because it's kind of like detoxifying too fast. You have a healing crisis. It's very similar, so you want to do it in layers because you do mess up the brain chemistry and then the physiology. And the spine is the central, it's the nervous system. It's what we are playing with in our yogic practices. And the nervous system contains all of our memories and everything. So if we move too quickly, then we create the PTSD, the psychotic breaks. But that's on a more basic level, that's what's happening. So I just wanted to state that, because
I think we're saying the same, I think we're
No,
saying a
but I mean, I
similar
just
thing.
wanted to break it down
Yeah.
to something a little more tangible, I guess,
Mhm.
because it just felt a little bit,
Too vague.
yeah,
Yeah.
and a little bit black and white to me, because,
Oh.
you know, I don't really believe in absolute states, but it just felt like, yeah, to me, karma is something that is constantly in motion. And when people think, oh, I have to create good karma, well, what does that mean? What does that really mean, good karma? You know what I mean? You want your experiences to be healthier, I'm assuming. So what does that mean? How do we create
Well, you want balance.
We, one of our, actually, the chapter just previous to this was on karma. So we covered a lot of that, and especially the fact that nothing is either good or bad. It just is. It is what it is.
Right.
So whether you consider it good or bad is your perception of it. But in the long run, nothing is bad because everything helps us learn something.
It's educative. Even if it feels uncomfortable, it's educative.
Some of the most valuable lessons I've learned in life were the most painful and the most difficult.
You guys are getting into the next chapter now, so be careful.
Silva, did you want to add something?
Well, I think I get what you're saying, is that, you know, for, and I don't mean to bring up like religion or anything, but like for the, you know, the people that do like the bombings, in the name of God, like to them, they're living out like the best karma. And to them, they are doing something so good. And that's their karma. And I think that's what you're kind of saying is like, it's like your karma's internal versus like someone else saying this is how you should live. And if you don't live this way, you're gonna get bad karma. But it's more like
Right.
what do you define as a good karma within yourself?
Well, it's just been my experience that you experience what you are emanating.
Right.
So you could be a do-gooder, but if you're miserable, it doesn't matter. You're going to attract who's going to stay miserable. It really doesn't matter.
That's very true.
And so that's kind of a distinction I wanted to make.
No, I love what you said when you first started talking, Paige, that it's your own constitution. I'm not sure if you used that word, but it's your own energy. It's your own aura, for example, of how you operate. That is, of course, that is your karma. Yes, and that's what you'll attract. It's all about resonant frequencies. If you vibrate a certain way and you live a certain way, you're going to definitely attract that. We're saying the same thing, maybe just in just different languages.
I want to just kind of follow up on Jerry's point, though, about success. And we all get to determine what we consider to be success. And I think for most people who are following kind of the yogic path, success is being in the present moment and simply doing the step that you're on right now. Don't worry about 10 years from now. Don't worry about 10 seconds ago. All you need to really worry about is this step that you're on right now. And when I say step, it may be nothing more than reading one word in a book or a paragraph. That is the step you're on right now. Focus on it. Be aware. And that's all you have to do. Life is really simple. We make it hard.
I'm going to add one more thing as well, since I'm getting excited about this idea of cultivating power and everything. There's
You want to be powerful.
yeah, come on, let's do it, man, masculine. Yeah, no, balance, of course. We lean into the teachings of Patanjali a lot, and we love his Yoga Sutras teaching because it's 95% psychological in nature, and it turns the spotlight inward, and it talks about learning the stains of our own mind, and do we have any mental pains that we need to recognize and heal, and then how do we learn to meditate and all these things. And then there are other teachers in the yoga world that I also study as well, but to a lesser extent. And there are a couple of other texts that I can reference, and one is called the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. And that's a book that's even thicker than most of the Yoga Sutras books that we reference. And that's the book on physical yoga, or the yoga of cultivating power. Now, I believe that you have to practice, that we should ethically practice both methods of yoga hand in hand. It's like it's like the yin and yang of yoga. The classical original teaching of Patanjali is mostly mental, and that throws people for a loop when I teach at yoga teacher trainings, for example. They're like,
wait a minute, where are all the teachings on downward dog and warrior two and all that? And I'm like, wait a minute, yoga was about meditation. It wasn't about contorting our body in certain ways. However, there are plenty of texts, ancient texts, because when they're ancient, they seem to be more valuable for some reason, or more like meaningful, on the physical stuff. And so what I'm saying about this yin and yang relationship of the Patanjali yoga versus all the other tantric or hatha yoga texts, they're practiced hand in hand, because one gives you the power and one gives you the ethics and the moral compass to use the power properly. One without the other is dangerous or inert. So if you're the smartest person in the universe, but you have no ability, no physical body, for example, you're just a brain in a jar, but you can solve all the problems. You can't do much in the world. Maybe you can somehow hook into a computer and do something, I don't know. But you got to have the body and physical capacities to walk in the world, meet people, create relationships, and do things. On the flip side, if you had this amazing physical presence and all the power in the world, but no ethical compass, that's dangerous. And we have people in power right now that might be on that side of the equation. Lots of power and not many morals or ethics to guide them. So in the world of yoga, that's why we believe that the sutras are so important. And of course, cultivate our power as well through the physical stuff.
When you said brain in the jar, I just thought of Abby Normal. Remember from
I don't know
Young
that.
Frankenstein?
Oh, that's funny.
When I said, where did you get that brain? He says, I got it from the jar. It's named Abby Normal.
What?
You're going way back now.
I am dating myself.
Well, we have some notes here about some very practical stuff, and we don't want to be too just kind of nebulous and talk about theory all day. We want to talk about practical things. So
Before we do that, I want to address one more thing about the dangers.
Okay.
And we mentioned the four states of consciousness, which are Jagrat, our normal waking consciousness, the deep unconscious sleep, which is Sushupti, and then the dream state, which is Svapna. This is semi-consciousness. Now, a lot of people, and I can't remember if we addressed this in the last class, wonder, can't we use drugs of some sort, whether they're natural or whether they're medical drugs, manufactured drugs, to increase awareness? People in the 60s tried LSD and other mushrooms and psychotropic drugs to try to increase consciousness. So we've given this a lot of thought and a lot of research. And the conclusion that we come to, whether or not it's accurate, I don't know, is that if you can't stop it immediately, then this is not leading to higher consciousness. When you are meditating and you reach a very high level of consciousness, if you need to attend to something in everyday life, you're able to stop that within a couple of seconds and go attend to whatever it is you need to attend to. But when you are under the influences of any kind of drugs, you don't have that control. You don't have that luxury of making the decision. It's out of your hands. So if it is out of your hands, it's not something that you want to be messing with. Obviously, there are times when we, if you're having surgery or, something else is going on, you have to be under that influence. But as you know, you can't make the decision and say, okay, and I'm tired of that. Now I want to be awake again. No, it happens when it's going to happen. You're not in control. So if you're not in control, it's not something you want to be messing with.
So do you feel there isn't any benefit then to seeing the capacity of the mind, even if it's out of control, and that allows us to know how far the mind has the ability to go?
If you want to experiment, I would say, there's nothing wrong with that, but be very, very careful and analyze it carefully afterwards. I have experimented, but only, for very short periods of time. I'm glad I did, and I'm glad that I was never attracted to it to the point where I became addicted to any of that.
What do you think I'm not doing?
Just joking.
I'm from the 70s.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of
Do
us.
everything.
A lot of us tried different things. Yeah,
I
exactly.
agree with you. I did not find any expansion, nor did I experience the control I wanted.
Some of them were very fun, a lot of fun. But
Fun, laugh.
I really hated the fact that when I got to the point that, like, I said, okay, I'm tired. I can't laugh anymore. I couldn't. There was nothing I could do. I was exhausted for 3 days afterwards.
Yeah,
And I'm like, I'm never doing this again.
until the next time.
No, I guess I'm very fortunate because I have never liked anything where I felt like I wasn't completely in control. And so even though I'm glad I experienced it in different manners, I was never tempted to do it for very long at all. And I realize that's not the case with everyone. I just feel fortunate that I didn't feel that compulsion.
Can we go here?
Yeah.
Let's bring this down to a very, very practical discussion on why meditation is important and how to actually do it. It's important because it helps you become clear in life, and it helps you control your mind and your thoughts so you can function with effectiveness and skill and clarity. There's a Sanskrit word that we always throw out called viveka, which can be translated to different things: discernment, discrimination, clear sight, non-judgment. It can mean all these things. And if you can operate with a certain degree of viveka throughout your life, we believe success will come in your own personal path and in your quest to help others if that is part of your path. So meditation aids in that. It gives you the clarity of mind to do that, to live in the world skillfully. That's why meditation is so important. And yes, of course, we can eventually contact our higher self and do all the esoteric things and metaphysical things. But from a very practical standpoint, it makes your mind clear. And we have some very specific guidelines on what we believe you should incorporate in your life to meditate better. And I love how Terry says this. He says, when you're preparing to meditate, you don't do it 5 minutes or 3 minutes before you do it. You're like, okay, where am I going to sit? How's the temperature? You prepare 5 days before you meditate. And what he means by that is your life has to be somewhat conducive to a meditation practice. So if you're constantly in very exciting situations, very loud, very chaotic, very bright, and I have quite a few friends, and some of us have friends who probably work in those environments every single day. It's hard as heck to come back home and meditate after you've been like serving cocktails at a nightclub where it's very loud, very, very loud. Like you still feel the vibrations in your heart and your ears are ringing for like hours after you leave, and the lights and everything. How do you calm your mind after you've had so much stimulation? So that's an extreme example, but when you prepare 5 days prior, you just kind of like understand, is this situation I find myself in now going to be, is it conducive to when I try to quiet my vibes later? Or is it not? Is it going to stimulate me so much that I can't calm down, or is it aiding in my calmness and clarity of mind? So preparation is key.
Remember that part of our goal is becoming more sensitive, becoming more aware. And so if in our everyday life we go to wild concerts and parties and movies, et cetera, which most people consider perfectly normal, to the person who is more sensitive, that's like scratching your fingers on a chalkboard. It just doesn't even feel good at all. So this again is part of the loneliness you experience. You no longer are able to experience things the same way your friends and relatives experience them. You feel different. You're kind of an outsider now because you don't fit in. So that's part of the loneliness that happens.
for me, I work in an emergency room, and where I sit is next to all the monitors. So every monitor in the ER is beeping in my ear constantly, and if it's some are louder than others, and some have to beep until the patient's taken care of. And this is where I sit, so it's not only for the people that party or work in a cocktail
Right.
environment.
Yes.
So like I go into work and I don't listen to music, I meditate, meditating, something with meditation. And I go in and I'm like, today's gonna be a great day. And today I'm gonna try to meditate throughout my work. And then I go in, and then by the time I leave, I'm like, my entire day just went by, and I can still hear the ringing in my ears and the chaos and the people dying over there and the code coming in. And then my entire day just went away, and I don't even know how I got through. And everything that I planned to do that day, how I was going to take a 10-minute break to meditate, go into the office for 10 minutes or live in the now, I end up just getting consumed in that emergency room. So to me, it's not just working and
Right.
That was just one example, but
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah. Imagine a firefighter or police, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Some of these are just chaotic and not conducive to meditation. So we do the best we can with the circumstances we find ourselves in. And in your next lifetime, maybe you will have a different profession. And this is important that we plan ahead, because we create our next lifetime. We're creating it right now. So if there's something that you want to be very different, you plant that idea in your mind, and you make sure you revisit that periodically.
One of our
Sorry.
no, don't apologize.
I want to give you credit, though. I think it's a power of language. You have just as much ability to say that you are self-absorbed or completely absorbed in the moment, that it's not that it overcomes you, that you overcome the moment, because it's people like you. We can't have a world where we don't have these people, and we have to figure out a way to merge reality with this metaphysical place that we're trying to get to. And so I think if you can change your attitude towards what's happening at work, you might change the way you approach it, where to be in that situation where a lot of us couldn't even handle, you are in the moment. There is no other thought going on in your little head. And so maybe it's not the place that we want to be, but it is ultimately concentration, presentness.
It's a good way to look at it. Thank you.
So give yourself more credit.
No, that's-
We
Well,
need
yeah,
you.
it's-
We need
it's-
you. Everybody can't be enlightened and then just walk
Exactly.
around and no emergency happens.
I know. I've been like trying to think of a career move, something different.
Well,
but that's a
yes.
good way to look at it. Be of service.
Yeah, we need, as Kelsey says, we need those people in every one of their professions. We need enlightened people who are policemen and who are dispatchers and who are emergency room personnel, et cetera, et cetera. We need them everywhere. So we each do what we can where we are placed, and at the same time, we're creating our future environment right now.
One of our questions for contemplation that went out with the email for last class was, how do we protect ourselves from unwelcome thoughts directed at us from others? Now, let's expand that to, how do we protect ourselves from unwanted thoughts, from unwanted vibrations, because the monitor's beeping, the loud music, whatever situation we find ourselves in, how do we protect ourselves? Well, Kelsey brought up a few, changing your attitude and changing your idea, but there's also something specific that the yogic practices give us too. And this is actually taught in a theosophical book called The Etheric Double. And I don't remember the author, but I have the book at home.
I think, Powell, but
Yes.
it's a compilation of different
Oh,
books.
okay. So he might have pulled this from Leadbeater, but the etheric part of ourselves, which is the pranic body, there are ways to formulate. It's kind of like a Harry Potter thing, but formulating what is referred to as a shell or a shield. a pranic shell or a shield. And you can do that through your intention, through your affirmation. It's changing your aura, it's changing your own vibration so other vibes don't get in. And it doesn't have to be so woo. It can be something as basic as not thinking certain thoughts, not feeling certain emotions, so others of similar vibrations don't affect you.
You, the way Leadbeater explains it is you create like a shell, and it can be a partial shell or it can be a complete shell around you. And the intention is to create a shield, just like a warrior would use a shield to protect him or herself. And it makes things so they can't penetrate and get to you. The important thing to keep in mind is it requires energy. So it's an expenditure of energy to create it. And sometimes you have no choice. You know, you are sitting on an airplane next to a person who has, you know, a very strong negative vibration. You can create the shell just like a partition between you. It requires energy, and often it's very worthwhile. And then whenever possible, obviously you avoid those situations. Yes, Paige.
Well, I mean, I do like her point because in my own path, it starts out lonely, but you eventually get to a point where you're not affected by other people anymore. So like the great swamis and sages, they go back into society, right? And you don't have to shield yourself as much because what happens around you just goes right through you. So it's not a matter of resistance anymore. So that's another way to look at it.
I just read a very interesting article about trying to retrieve it. It was about meditation. It was also about the right side and the left sides of our brains. And it's like, I've got two different brains. One's here and one's here. You know, and they just operate just never together, you know, and they chatter and go on and on. Well, meditation, of course, helps us. So what they've done in studies on meditation, deep meditation, they can actually measure by taking MRIs or something on the brain. And whereas this side might be blue to start and this side red to start through meditation, everything becomes one. So I thought, well, I'm going to try this. And I've been doing it long enough now, through music mostly, that I can make this brain come together. And I can feel it up here instead of like that. I mean, literally, I feel it moving. And then within that space is deep peace. It's just peace. And it's a one. I think it's more than a theory. They have studied this.
That's yes.
The what?
That's yes.
They've studied this. So I try and do that when I get a little wacky.
A little wacky.
Move those two halves of that brain.
Continuing with our practical discussion of meditation, a couple other guidelines. If you decide to take up meditation practice, we want to make it clear, and I know you guys have heard me say this a lot in yoga teachings, the regularity of your meditation practice is more important than the duration, and we recommend selecting a time of day, preferably in the early morning, could be in the evening too, but any time that you can select that you can maintain on a regular basis, daily. This is a daily thing. Not just on Saturday mornings or Sunday mornings.
After the cartoons.
Yeah. Every single day, and it gets your mind trained. So instead of the mind acting like a wild pack of horses, like Eckhart Tolle talks about, which creates stress and dis-ease in the body, your mind will be trained. Every single day, it's spending time in quiet, and it doesn't have to be more than 4, 5, 6 minutes just to start, maybe even fewer minutes than that. But the regularity, just remember this though, it's not daunting. The regularity is more important than the duration. Eventually, the time spent in quietude will increase naturally because you'll find peace there. The brain, the two parts, your split personality. Wow, okay, this feels good. Also, a sacred space is important. It's best to do it in the same place every time, if possible, because just like anything in the physical world, vibrations are affecting. The vibrations you create affect the situation, or the environment. So the same place is conducive every day to meditation. just a few techniques I want to mention also. Mom, I know you always ask about what's the best way to meditate, what do you do? Well, there are so many techniques. Mantra japa is a very common one. Repeating a Sanskrit word over and over, very basic. It can be Om, it can be any, if you have a guru that's giving you a mantra. And again, that's a seed, right? It's the object of meditation that I mentioned earlier. If you repeat something over and over again, it keeps the mind from thinking about other things. That's the whole point. Ekagrata is what the Sanskrit word is for one-pointedness. Give your mind something to focus on so you're training it to be still. Otherwise, it's going to think about what's for dinner later, how comfortable is this chair, did I exercise properly yesterday or not enough? All right, so any variety of breathing techniques. Now, technically speaking, breath work or pranayama is preparation for meditation, but it can be considered a meditation too because you're giving your mind a seed, something to breathe, something to focus on. And there are so many breathing techniques, so it could be just pure breathing. What I cued us to do earlier, just follow the breath, very simple. Or it could be any variety of alternate nostril breathing where you close one side of your nose and breathe through the other and imagine an arc of energy going through the midbrain and back out again. There are many breathing techniques. Focusing on one of the energetic centers of the body. And if you're not into chakras, you can just focus on a body part. You can focus on the heart and just keep your awareness there and begin to feel the inner body. Eckhart Tolle is not a self-proclaimed yogi, but he is a yogi through and through. And he talks a lot about inner body awareness. He says that you can practice inner body awareness when you're having a conversation with somebody else, and you'll be so much more present for that person, and your eyes will be clear, and you won't be thinking about other things because you're feeling your own body, and that makes you present for that person. All right. Prayers, other longer mantras, affirmations, sending healing thoughts to another person. These are all methods of meditation. So meditation can be all these different things. It's whatever you can get your mind to focus on. Anything else on this? Nope. All right. We have time to go on to the next. Yeah, probably not. It's 3:45. Any thought? We didn't talk about this yet. Thought in other kingdoms of life. Go ahead. Go for it. All right. So the question is, how does the mind work in other kingdoms of life, specifically the animal world? How does that differ than thought in the human kingdom? Well, it starts off with the concept of instinct versus conscious choice. We as humans, we may have an animalistic body, but the thing that separates us is the ability for us to understand right from wrong and use our consciousness to make decisions. And animals operate on instinct. And now the higher animals, the more evolved ones, and we all know what some examples of those, dolphins and dogs and other animals that live in close proximity to humans, almost have an ability to know this, to understand right and wrong, and understand love and compassion and things like that. But the main difference is in understanding how thought works is we can begin to choose to think certain ways. Animals don't. They operate on instinct. And yes, there is an ability of an element of learning and understanding, and that's how they evolve. But they don't have the same kind of decision-making faculties that we have.
I want to point out that animals, on the other hand, are very much in tune with nature. The one exception is animals who have a strong relationship with humans. They actually start to imitate us and to create a sort of karma on their own. But the animals who live in the wild are operating completely under instinct. They are completely in tune with nature. We may not like the idea that they kill and eat other animals. It seem weird to us, but that's their nature, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, humans do it too.
Humans do it exactly, but we do it knowingly. We have a choice.
The animalistic
They don't.
humans do it.
A lion can't survive on grass, but they're very much in tune with nature. We, because of our ability to think and to make choices, are the ones who create karma and get off the path. And we're the only ones who have to get back on the path. So as we become more aware, as we grow in consciousness, we come back towards the path, and then we are again in alignment with nature. So they are by instinct and just naturally. We do it because we use our mind to become more aware.
I always thought of it the opposite, I guess.
So
For me, I always thought of it, we were animalistic and we didn't know any
okay.
better. And as we evolved and we realized we didn't have to emulate other animals and hunt for our food. And as we, through science and growth, we realized that, we can feed our bodies in other ways and we don't have to kill an animal to survive anymore. And that's how some people evolved to not eating and not harming animals. I guess that I look at it the other way. You look at it as coming back, and I look at it as evolving. But I mean, it doesn't. We could both be right.
Absolutely won't be right. I think some of those ideas come from religious teachings that we are better than animals, and it's not a matter of being better or worse than. It's just they're doing what they're supposed to do as animals. We aren't always doing what we're supposed to do as humans, but we're hopefully working towards that. They're on their path of achieving everything that they can in the animal kingdom. We're on our path trying to achieve everything we can in the human kingdom. So I think this whole idea of being animalistic is kind of misdirected in a sense, because humans can be much more cruel than animals can. I don't know animals that go out and kill other animals on a mass basis just for fun, but humans do. And so we have a lot to learn as far as being more in tune with nature. It's not about being better or worse. It's just that we can learn to become more in tune with nature and with what our true potential is.
There's a cool graphic that's coming up in a couple chapters, the plan and purpose of life. And it describes the journey of the soul as it involutes. Is that a word? Involutes?
Involution. Well,
We can make it a word.
Okay. As the soul involutes into matter and then evolutes, evolves, involves itself in matter, I guess it would be, or devolves itself into matter and then evolves out of matter back towards source again. And then again, it's a cycle, of course. It's an interesting graphic because it does put the animal kingdom behind the human kingdom in terms of evolution, and it is, but the animal kingdom is actually higher in terms of closer to spirit than the human. We're at the nadir, the bottom of this arc, of this evolutionary arc. We view ourselves as humans completely separate, completely cut off, for the most part, from spirit. Animals are not. That's the whole idea of flocks of birds flying in perfect sync, schools of fish. They are more spiritual than we are, but they have not devolved as far as we have either. And it's necessary to devolve to experience what the human realm gives, this idea of separateness. And how do we consciously get back? Animals aren't conscious of that. That's just instinctual. We have to evolve through this dark depth of separation, and the most pain that all kingdoms of life experience too is in the human world, because we suffer.
It's like we're on one side of a valley, a mountainous valley, and we want to be on the other side. You can't go up without going down.
Right.
You have to go down first, and then you
A
can go up.
shortcut through.
Yeah.
Okay.
A wormhole
Or
from one
fly,
side.
yes, there you go. That's
Let me bring up something else. We have 9 minutes left, and we always have the best intentions to cover more material than we actually do. But I'm very involved in certain specific meditation practices that I've learned through my studies in yoga. And if you're open to it, we can talk about one in particular. I don't know how many of you have a regular meditation practice or if you care to learn a specific technique, but one of the things that I always talk about when I teach is sending healing thoughts to a loved one. And that can be kind of vague. How do you actually do that? Yeah. That's a meditation technique. That's one thing that you can do during your meditation. And you almost become like a channel. You become healed in the process of helping others to heal. And there's a specific technique that I've learned that's very tantric in nature, which is all about the energy. And if you want, we can talk about it and actually move through the practice if that's something that's interesting. Or we can talk about other questions that you might have in the last 8 or 9 minutes.
In regards to that,
Sure.
like science, to send a channel, don't we need a receptive channel?
Not necessarily.
You don't
At
think
some,
there's any value in that one having awareness of it coming?
not a conscious awareness. At some point in time, if they're not resonant to the vibrations you're sending, at some point, maybe it'll be during their sleep. Maybe it'll just affect their higher nature. And I'm really glad that you brought this up because the technique is called the unconditional healing meditation. So it's not up to us it's not up to us for the result. We intend to help without any attachments onto how that help looks. Or
What's the difference between intention and perception?
if you have a pure intention, it'll have an effect. It'll have it doesn't have to, but you have to remember that the exact intention that you have, if it's too specific, you're going to be disappointed in the result. It can't have any attachments as to how the help appears. If you're, for example, if you're sending just good energy and prana to someone, what happens if that prana lets them die gracefully, for example? Die without any pain if they're ill, if they're sick. Is that the result you initially wanted? Probably not. You wanted to heal them, perhaps. I'm just giving an example. But what if that was the best for their soul's evolution? They needed to exit this physical body and do something else. It's just the idea. We cannot control someone else's reaction to any help, whether it's physically helping someone with our hands or intending.
I'm just thinking of like scientifically, if you have a radio channel and you send it out, there is nothing that happens without the
Right.
receiving. You need a receiver to have effect.
Yes.
I mean,
Well, that's
I like the pretend world. I'm totally in. But then science always pulls me back to, yeah, but
No,
that's
and
not
I
how
think
it
you're
works.
absolutely right. If the person isn't on the same wavelength and doesn't want help or not attuned to it, I don't see that they are going to receive it. There has to be a sender and a receiver, and they need to be in sync.
Right, but the most important part to me would be
The
your
intent.
intention,
Exactly.
your purity of
It's-
that intention. So whatever happens, I'm not attached to the outcome. I know what I want to do from my heart and
Right.
the pureness of that thought. And where it goes to that person and how it is received is not my job.
Exactly.
So
I want to point out one thing
Oh,
that kind
okay.
of ties in with all of that, and that is that something that HPB said, and that is that the teachers or the inspiration that we receive when we're on the path occurs at 2 times. At first, during sleep, and secondly, during meditation. So one thing we can do is be very conscientious about what we do the last 2 hours of the day before we go to sleep. If you're watching a movie on TV or listening to, rock music or something, it, again, gets your vibrations all kind of in a jangle. But if you do something quiet, reading something, more conducive to meditation or just listening to quiet, peaceful music or just thinking even, for the last 2 hours and then go to sleep, you're already in a receptive state. And the quality of your dreams will be very different from what they would be otherwise. So this is one thing that's very practical and that can help you in your practice.
It's so interesting that you're bringing this up. So I have a couple other thoughts as well. When you send prana to someone, prana is intelligent to a certain extent, but it's really just like fuel. It's energy. And you're sending it, of course, with your own ideas of love and compassion, but the person that's receiving it will use that energy. You know, it's almost like if you view prana like a flashlight. If someone's walking or hiking on a trail in the nighttime and you're nearby, you're maybe on the hillside next to them, you shine the flashlight down in front of their path, you say, turn that off, I don't want that light. The light is still there, and they're still going to be able to see the path that you're shining it to them. So it's the same idea. If you breathe in, imagine energy rising the spine, and breathe out from your third eye and imagine it hitting their heart, which is part of the technique. It's just energy for them. It's just you're giving them a gift, basically. It's like shining a flashlight in front of them. They could say, no, I don't want it, but it's going to them, and they might use that energy for ill will. But then if you're worried about their receptivity, choose a different person to send love and light to.
Can we do the technique, or is it
Yeah.
too late?
No, we can totally do it. But
Report, I wish I had the more facts about this because I've forgotten it, but a while back, several years ago, there was a power of prayer study done. It was quite a large study, and the people were just asked, they didn't know who they were praying for. They were just, I can't remember if they're giving them names, but the people receiving the prayers were not aware of it. And it was a healing type thing. And they showed through the study that it worked.
I think you sent me the article on that. It was a study.
I?
It was a study at a hospital. It was done at a hospital.
I can't remember. I just
Yeah.
wish I had it. I think if I Google power of prayer study, something should pull up, but.
I read about that at a hospital, and they had 2 test groups with multiple people, not just like 3 or 4, like
Right.
20
It's been a
in each
pretty
group.
big study.
But I think it was talking about time too,
Mm.
how they were healed at, the prayer was then at a certain time, but then they were healed at a different time. So I think it talks about time and space as well, not just healing. It's in a book.
That is interesting.
Audiobook I'm listening.
It's 3:59, so I think I'll turn off the live feed, and if you guys want to stay for an extra 3 or 4 minutes, we can talk about this technique and do it. Let's get this ended. All right, to our online students, thank you for participating. I think we only have 1 right now, but that's all right. Okay, any last comments online? Let me scroll through these. Okay. All right, I'll sign off there.